Nobody tells you it starts this quietly. You're not in a hospital, you're also not crying on the floor, you're just sitting. Maybe at your desk, or on your bed, or in a room full of people who are laughing at something. And you're there, physically present, accounted for, but somewhere between your eyes and the rest of the world, there is a distance you can't close. You look normal. That's the thing. You look completely, perfectly, devastatingly normal. And that's exactly what makes it so hard to explain to anyone. Because when people imagine mental illness, they imagine a visible collapse, something dramatic enough to justify the weight of it. What they don't imagine is a normal Tuesday. What they also don't imagine is a person who showered, got dressed, answered their messages, maybe even laughed at something, and still felt like they were living inside a body that belonged to someone else. That is a version nobody talks about. The functional kind, the kind that doesn't look like anything from the outside. The kind I lived in for a long time. I want to tell you something honest about depression before we go any further. Not the clinical version, not the brochure. Depression is not sadness. Sadness can be clean, sadness has hedges. Sadness comes from something and eventually moves towards something else. Depression is slightly different. Depression is the removal of the thing that makes anything matter at all. It doesn't make your life feel painful. It makes your life feel like it's happening to someone slightly behind you. Like you're watching yourself move through days you used to actually live. You stop tasting things the same way, not literally, but almost literally. The things you love go quiet, not gone, just muted. Like someone turned the volume down on every part of your life and forgot to tell you where the dial was. And then you just sit there staring at something that used to mean something to you, feeling absolutely nothing, and the silence is so loud it almost becomes its own sound. That silence is the part I was most afraid of, because pain at least means you're still there. Anxiety is the other side of this, and if you had both at the same time, taking turns dismantling you from the inside, then you know that they are not opposites. They're a system. Depression empties you out, and anxiety rushes in to fill the void with noises. It is a voice, your own voice. That's the part nobody prepares you for. It doesn't sound foreign. It sounds exactly like you. Your logic, your tone, your reasoning, except it has been turned entirely against you. It takes everything ordinary and finds a version of it that should terrify you. Friend doesn't reply fast enough, and suddenly you know, with complete irrational certainty, that something is wrong. You walk into a room and feel instantly that everyone in it has already formed an opinion about you. You say something in a conversation and spend the next 4 hours in a courtroom inside your own head, prosecuting yourself for it. And the worst part is how reasonable it all sounds. That's what makes anxiety so hard to fight. You can't just tell it to stop. It comes with evidence, it builds a case, and when your own mind is the one cross-examining you, it is very hard to argue back. You carry it. You fold it up and you carry it. And you get very good at carrying it quietly. If my memory is right, I was 17 the first time I understood that what I was feeling had a name. And my first reaction, I remember this very clearly, was not relief, it was embarrassment. Because there is something about being young and being told your brain is struggling that feels like a failure of a very specific kind. Like everyone else got the same starting conditions and managed just fine, and you are the one who couldn't keep up. That thought is a lie, but it is a very convincing one when you're 17. Here's something that is true, that I wish someone had told me then. The human brain is not finished at 17, it is not finished at 19 or 21. The prefrontal cortex, the part of you responsible for regulating emotions, for putting the present moment in perspective, and for separating what is real from what your fear is inventing, doesn't fully form until your mid-20s, which means that every hard thing you are feeling right now, you are feeling it with an instrument that is still being built. You are doing the hardest emotional work of your life with the least equipped version of your mind you will ever have. That is not weakness. That's just the brutal and glamorous reality of being young, in a world that does not slow down while you develop, and the world is not slowing down. It is, in fact, doing the opposite, has handed you a device that you carry everywhere, that never turns off, and that shows you at all hours without pause. A perfect curated endlessly scrollable window into the highlight reel of everyone else's life, and your brain still forming, still trying to figure out who you are and whether you are okay. Takes one look at that window and starts doing math. Their life, your life, the gap between them. In conclusion, something is wrong with you specifically. That math is rigged, and you know that. And it doesn't really matter, because knowing a thing is irrational has never once stopped an anxious brain from believing it anyway. That is not how our brain works. That is not how any of this works. What actually happens is quieter and more corrosive than a single bad thought. What actually happened is accumulation. Day after day, scroll after scroll, the quiet arithmetic of comparison runs in the background of everything you do. And slowly, without you noticing the exact moment it happens, it starts to feel like happiness. Like the world is showing you with data something you suspected about yourself all along. I know what it feels like to believe that happiness, to wake up one morning and realize you've been running on it for so long it has become the foundation of how you see yourself. And that's the point where it stops being a feeling and starts being an identity. And that is the most dangerous place of all. Because once you've decided this is just who you are, once the weight starts to feel like furniture, like it was always there, like it's simply part of the architecture of your life, you stop questioning it. You stop looking for the door, you stop believing there is one. That is what learned helplessness actually is. Not giving up dramatically, just quietly, over time, forgetting that you ever had another option. I forgot for a while, and I want to say something about the silence, about the specific decision made over and over to keep all of this inside. There is a reason we do it. It is not stupidity and it's not cowardice. It is a very rational response to a world that has consistently, historically, not known what to do with this. You have watched people get told to think positive, to go outside more, to be grateful, even to try harder. You watched vulnerability get treated as discomfort by the people it was handed to. And so you learned early that the safest place for this was inside. But the truth is, silence is not safety. Silence is just a slower kind of damage. Illness does not stay the same size when you stop naming it. It grows. It fills the space you give it. It gets comfortable and it starts to feel normal. And one day you can't even remember what it felt like before it was there. And you're not sure that version of you was ever real. I stopped being able to remember. There is a line in Marcus Aurelius, a man who was arguably one of the most powerful people who ever lived, and who spent his private journals in a constant, grinding battle with his own mind, where he writes that the impediment to action advances action, that the obstacle is the way. I used to read that and feel nothing, because when you are inside it, philosophy sounds like something designed for people who are not currently inside it. It sounds like advice from a distance. But what stayed with me, what I kept coming back to, was not the line itself. It was the fact that he wrote it all, that even Marcus Aurelius, with all of that power, all of that discipline, all of that stoic training, was still sitting alone with his thoughts, still struggling, still having to remind himself. Nobody is doing this without the weight. They are just carried in different directions. That means the question is never whether the weight is real, because it is. It always was. The question, the one that is much harder to sit with, is what you've decided the weight means about you. Because here is the thing nobody says at the end of these conversations. Here is the part that gets left out because it isn't clean and it doesn't resolve into anything comfortable. I don't have an answer for you. I'm not standing on the other side of this. I'm not looking back at it from somewhere warm and well lit. It gets better in a tone that suggests I know what comes next. Some days are lighter, some days the frequency goes quiet and I almost forget it's there. Then it comes back. And on those days, the thought that sits in the back of my mind, the one I think a lot of people carrying this never say out loud, isn't about recovery. It isn't about getting better. It's something much simpler, much older, and much harder to answer. If this has been inside me this long, how much of who I am is actually me, and how much of it is just a weight I learned to carry so well that I stopped noticing where it ended and I began.